The psychedelic revolution is here. If you want to integrate your visionary experiences into your purpose, get clear on your entrepreneurial path, and help people while you do what you love, then this podcast is for you. Welcome to The Psychedelic Entrepreneur, Medicine for These Times. I'm your host, Beth Weinstein. I'm a spiritual business coach, 3-time entrepreneur, and a lifelong student of psychedelics and sacred plant medicines. You carry your own unique medicine, and your medicine is what we need for these times. This podcast will help you to share your medicine so you can create transformation in the world. Listen in on conversations with psychedelic leaders, changemakers, and conscious entrepreneurs who are living proof that a better world is possible when you follow your heart and live in alignment with your soul. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Medicine for These Times. I'm so happy to have my friend Bina here with us today. And Bina is also the designer of my new branding. Hi, Bina. Thanks for being here.
Hi. I'm so happy to be here, Beth.
I'm so excited to get into it. So this is the second time we've tried to record this podcast. And you know what? I decided I don't think I should record any episodes during eclipse season. Because first it was just crazy, and then we had, technical problems, and then you got sick. So much better, all in divine timing.
Yes.
So let me tell you about Bina. Bina Altera is the intuitive, dynamic visual communicator behind the branding studio Bina. An accomplished artist, illustrator, photographer, and designer, Bina created Bina for people who understand that a visual identity that reveals their true passion and purpose is essential to their success. So the syllables of her first name inspired the name of the studio. B is a reminder to be in the moment, and na reminder means there is nothing, nada, in the way of infinite possibilities. Be in the moment, na. Prior to founding Bina, Bina's photo-collage illustrations appeared in the New York Times, the Boston Globe Sunday Magazine, the Atlantic Monthly, among other noteworthy publications. She has received numerous awards for editorial art, and she spent over a decade at the School of Visual Art leading emerging technologies. While at SVA, a multi-disciplinary art and design school in Manhattan, she earned an MPS in digital photography, taught digital imaging and photography, and created a course in advanced digital printing. She holds a BFA from the Art Institute of Boston. And like I said, Bina has designed my new branding, which should be out now as this episode publishes. I think we're starting 1 or 2 episodes before yours, so I'm really excited. And we will get into it, but I want to preface this conversation by saying just this weekend, last night, I had to do something for someone on my team and create this real art. And it was the first time I got to play around with my new branding. And Bina, this was a very exciting moment. I actually felt an internal shift in my being. And I was like, oh, this is the alchemy of the new branding. So
that's so great to hear.
I was like, it was weird. It was a weird feeling where I was like, whoa, I feel like I've become this kind of like stepped into that next level. But we'll get into it because I want everybody to hear about your process and how much of a psychedelic journey it was in itself and how we got there. But let's hear a little bit about your story. I'm curious, how did you find your unique medicine in the world, and what brought you to making branding and visual arts your living?
Yeah, such a great question. My unique medicine, it's a combination of, it's really making art. It's drawing, it's being present, it's being in the moment. And I discovered that at a very early age. My father passed away when I was 12, and I had, it was like art was my salvation. And it really, like, those, days after defined the rest of my life. I made creating my livelihood. And it was very important to me. It was important to me because it gave me hope. It gave me hope for, what my life can look like in the future and who I can be. And also, I realized how important it was to live every moment of your life and to take risks. And because you never know, right? Like tomorrow, we can't, we might not wake up tomorrow, and that's just life, right? So being in the moment and being present. Yeah.
So good. Now I'm curious, you studied art in college, you had this full art career, and you also work with medicines, which is how I met you and how I heard about you, which made the branding process a lot more interesting. But I'm curious, how did non-ordinary states or psychedelic, medicines play into your true path? I'm curious, were you already on this path and then did medicines, or you'd worked with medicines and became an artist? I'm curious to hear.
Yeah, no, I came to the medicine really like maybe 7 years ago, 6 years ago. And so that happening like later in my life. And I went there specifically because I was just dealing with depression, and I had read and learned and many books and about the psilocybin and the great impact that it has on people, and so that was something that I decided later in life. But it was the art that when I look at it in retrospect, as I'm doing the parallel of making art and design and doing medicine, it's like the path is parallel. It is like, I'm like, oh, I've been doing this all along. And everything kind of became more clear, like my life and my journey and my path and the decisions that I made. And in my art, I look back, I'm like, I didn't even know these concepts, and I was creating art about these concepts, And so it's just really like the medicine work has created a deeper connection for me and a deeper why, like, why do I do this? And a deeper purpose. I know like that I get to, do the medicine, work with people who are also on the same path. And, with my vision and my creativity and my storytelling, and, like we can go on, we can just talk about the parallels of, the path, the medicine work and art. But it's like, the medicine work it's a journey. It's your interpretation. It's like metaphors. It's like all of that. And when you do your integration work, which is so important, you bring all of that with you on the days in the days after. And so it's just, I don't know. It's just, to me, it's magic. Magic is so important. Magic is where it all happens. I mean, I think about, I love, the one thing I kept in mind when I was making your brand was I love to keep 3 words in mind because I just check myself. And your 3 words were sophisticated, professional, and a bit of magic. So I'm like, is there a bit of magic in here? Is it professional? It's like, so those were my little checks along the way. And I felt like the bit of magic was so important with your branding, because the work that you do, yes, it's like, it's being an entrepreneur, and that in itself is a journey, right? Like that in itself is like, that is, I have learned so much, and
I talk about that a lot. I always say, being the entrepreneurial journey is it's very much like a psychedelic journey, and it's deep. It has its ups and downs. It's scary at first. Eventually you write it out and get used to it. And then there's these highs and these lows. And I always say people that work with medicines can make really good entrepreneurs for that reason.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're battling with those limiting beliefs, and who knows what shit is going to show up today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I wanted to ask you about that because you had worked. So, for those that don't know, SVA is one of the best art schools, I think, in the country, but definitely in this area, it's one of the, more well-known ones. And it's, after living in New York City for so many years, everybody knows about SVA. But you had this great career, working there and, working for some of these other publications. And then you went on your own, I think, just recently, right? In the last few years?
A year and a half ago.
Wow, yeah. And it's funny because I think that's when I first heard about you, which is great for getting word of mouth referrals in your first few months. Mm-hmm. But I'm curious, do you feel like your spiritual journey or the medicine journey played a part in going out on your own? Or was it kind of just like, fuck it, I'm done and ready to be on my own after all these years?
Oh, no. I got a direct message. Ooh. And it was very clear. I mean, if I had been, thinking about, well, what's my next move for a couple of years. But it was, I got a really clear message. And, of course, you never want to make any major life changes, right, immediately after a journey. However, I had been thinking about it for years, and it was like, it was time. I felt it. I felt that, there are a lot of people, a lot of coaches, a lot of, coming into this industry, and like, it's just, and I want to support that, that world. Like, I want to somehow be a part of that new, evolution that we're all going through. And so this is how I can do it, at this moment.
I love that because I actually talk about this a lot. So many people want to be involved with the psychedelic space and the psychedelic renaissance. And a lot of these people think, oh, I'll just be a facilitator. And I keep saying, I'm like, I don't believe that everybody is here to be a facilitator. And yes, there is some aspect of that sounds so glamorous, even though I personally find it kind of boring sometimes. But generally, I keep saying that there's so many other ways to contribute, where I've now met, like psychedelic informed graphic designers and psychedelic informed copywriters, and then even marketing people, or people like my podcast producer is a medicine woman. Mm-hmm. And and she actually, when I first met her, she said, I only want to work with psychedelic podcasts. And I know for a fact she has at least 2 of us. I think maybe even a couple more. And I love that you mentioned that too. It's like, this is your way you can contribute and it's like bringing your fullest self, where maybe it's not necessarily just giving people medicine, but it's still like being part of this movement that you believe in.
Yeah.
I love that. And I also love that you got the clear message, even though it was intuitively, you knew it was time to move on. And this actually happens to a lot of my clients and even me, the messages came through over and over and over, whether with or without medicine. And it's like, okay, there's something in me that knows that I'm here for something more. And then it's kind of like the medicine just makes it so much more clear that then you're able to integrate it and say, like, now is it time? Like, let's do this. I'm curious, did you have any, I know you're married. Did you have any resistance from, let's say, your husband or anyone around you? Like, oh my God, you're crazy. This is going to be so hard.
No, we actually moved into this together, which, I have friends who are like, oh, you guys are so lucky. You're both doing this together. And yeah, in a lot of ways, yes. And I feel like we've always kind of been on this path. We've always been seekers and really curious. And so it was like a no-brainer. Like Rob got an invitation. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna, that sounds. There was no doubt in my mind. It was all like, yes. I felt the yes in my body.
Yeah, I call it, people call it the calling, but I keep calling it the pull.
Yeah.
Where it's like there's a pulling of your soul on your path, and it's up to us to really feel it and say yes. And yeah, it's scary as hell to take that leap, but it's like leap and the net really does appear every time. I mean, for me, it was a roller coaster for many years with previous businesses, and who knows, like I always say, I never know where this is going to go in the future. Like, I think the universe, or whatever we might call it, like our soul has this divine plan for us. But if we're always just tuning in to like, okay, well, what's lighting me up? What's coming through the intuition? What are the messages I'm getting? Whether it's, usually it's mostly intuitive first, and then maybe confirmed by the medicine or meditation or other non-ordinary states that people have, where it's like, oh, I've known this all along.
Yeah.
So I love it. Thank you so much for sharing all this. And I'm glad you've gone out on your own, because now that I've worked with you, I'm like, wow, you are going to have no problem getting clients. So let's talk about your process, which this actually is what interested me the most, when we had a common friend that introduced or gave me your name. And I was like, well, because I've tried to hire people to do my branding and kind of graphics and design, and it's taken me many, many years now, and I haven't really found the right person. I mean, I found maybe like one person that made me some good graphics, but it wasn't going to the point where I really needed it to go. And you took me on this really deep journey. I mean, our intake calls must have been like it was like being on the podcast, but it was about every single thing in my life. Yeah. Even taking pictures around my house, I thought was very fascinating. I was like, wait, you're right. I should look around my own house. Like, I've never even paid attention. I just know I like certain things. And then we started noticing lots of snakes. Like the ones behind me, and plants. And I kept getting this vision of gold coming through. Back in 2019, I had this full weird activation that I now know to be Sekhmet, who is Egyptian goddess of kind of like the Kali, Egyptian Kali. But I didn't even know who she was. She just kept coming to me, and I kept saying, I want this like gold, powerful branding, and I don't know what it looks like, and I don't want it to be lame and cheesy, but it has to stand for me. And like you said, I wanted it to be taken seriously, but I'm also a medicine person, and it's kind of like, how do you meet in the middle of business, serious, but like also like light, and on the spiritual path, like talking about this, my spirit and the medicine and soul and everything we bring into my work. So yeah, let's talk about your process. How'd you even come up with this? Because that was deep and intense.
Yeah. I'm glad you enjoyed that. It was deep. It is deep. And I want to start, like, I feel really called to start by just sharing. When I was in art school, there was one thing one of my mentors said to me was always like, oh, you have to, but like, you want to like put yourself in it, like whatever it is. And so that's kind of how I approach the branding. Like, not me, I put my clients in the work. So to do that, I need to learn about them, who they are and where they come from, and what they've done in the past and how they got here. And I ask some like odd questions as well, right? And and this is my process, right? This is what helps me. And I'm not saying like designers aren't going to do it the same way. I think I also, working with you, I knew it was important that I asked like about your spirit animals and archetypes, and I wanted to get that, and this is the thing that's so important. It's like, I have to feel it. I have to embody it. And when I go into medicine space, I bring my clients with me when I'm working on someone specifically, like, and I, there's enough time for everything. So there's, I find it really fun to, and that's why the snake because I kept feeling it in the medicine space. I'm like, Beth is the snake was just really important. It just, because I kept hearing, it's like, it's where you're going. It's where, and so all of that, it's like I wake up in the morning, I light a candle, and you're on my altar. Like, that's my process. You're on my altar. Like, I dream, like, my dreams are like vivid and crazy every night. And, it's like, it's just embody it. I feel it. And I'm an empath, but, the good or bad part of, it's not easy. I just like it's the process of feeling, and with specifically my heightened sense perception, like my strongest is feeling. And so I feel, I hear, I see. And that was like another part about wanting to create my own livelihood and work with the people that I wanted to work with, was because I have all these gifts and they weren't being used, in corporate world. And it was bumming me out. I'm just like, I have so much more to offer. And I just, and this is my process, it's like embodying, feeling, seeing, smelling, like dreaming, going into medicine space, like writing. I do a lot of writing, like, and when we did a brand guide style booklet, and everything from the discovery call is in that booklet, and along the journey of creating the brand, I went back to that information like constantly, because I'm like, just to like, I have to check does this make sense? Does this, is this going to like really say what we want to say? It's the visual interpretation, the branding is just as important as the words you write on your website. It's another way that people access who you are and what you're offering. And I mean, and I think that's just I think it's really important. And clearly you think it's really important. And that's why we were like a good match, right? Like, we worked well together because we understood how important it is, and the purpose behind it. And, I have to say, Beth, like, I really appreciate that. Like, you pushed me, like, you pushed me to, like, do better. And I really, like, I'm really proud of what we created.
Oh my God, so good. And I know, I actually, what's interesting is during the intake of, all those questions and looking around my land and my house and, like the textiles, I think just because I've become so used to my living environment and even my life, to stop and take a really deep look at, like, what is the work I really do? What is it really like with my clients? What are, like, yeah, it's like I call myself a business coach, but here's what really goes on. Mm-hmm. And that process really helped me own a part of myself as well. It's kind of like you just said, I know I have these gifts. I don't advertise them. Like, rarely to never do I talk about how intuitive I am, because I'm the same way as you are. I can't help it. It's always been like that, even since I was young, like very young. I just get intuitive hits about people around me, friends, clients. And usually when I share them, they are right, meaning they always come true. And sometimes I'll share them with people and they're like, it's almost like I see it long before they see it in themselves. Mm-hmm. But, every time I get some kind of like a dream or intuition or a vision about a client, or just like something pops up, I've now learned to trust it, and I always share it with my clients, and it's always on point. Like, it always produces some major shift in them. And so I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm actually using these gifts of mine that are like well beyond traditional, what we would call business. And it's like the same thing you said. Anybody could just bang out some generic graphic design, right? But if it really emulates someone's soul, like what I could feel last night is that I felt for the first time ever, because I'll be honest, Bina knows this, I had never really cared about my branding, because I was always in just like growth, like get things out there, let me grow, like, oh, this doesn't really matter, it does the job. But many years ago, I actually had a client say to me, she's like, wow, your branding is so much cheesier than you are because you really do such deep work. And I know I do. It's like when I'm with clients, I do really deep work. But when you look at my website, it looks kind of just like, oh, it's like a generic website, whatever. Like it kind of doesn't really say who I am. And in 2019, when I started having these visions come through me, that's when I had a huge personal shift in my work. It was right when I was about to come out of the psychedelic closet in public, like in a bigger way. And that's when I started getting these visions and these like very clear colors coming through, and like these Egyptian, you know, like, and it's weird because I still haven't been to Egypt. Mm-hmm. Even this summer, I had a very clear download of a pyramid. I've always been highly connected to the sun. And voila, if you look at my new branding, it's all intertwined. And then the snake, it's funny, last night, and I think you've said this before, but I was like, why did this just take me this long to make sense out of it? You know, my podcast, Medicine for These Times, was also a download that came through. And I called it the psychedelic entrepreneur, mostly because everyone said, well, the algorithms will think you're a medical podcast, so you have to have the word psychedelic in. So, But now it's been 2.5 years, and I don't really care about algorithms. I care about being true to me. And I've always liked Medicine for These Times actually better than the psychedelic entrepreneur. So yesterday when I was working with these, you know, like some of the images, I was like, oh, medicine. It's not just the snake as like ayahuasca is my main medicine, and I think yours as well. And everybody knows it's a snake with ayahuasca. But it's like, I mean, look at the whole realm of medicine and the snake and what it's about, and this intertwined relationship. And it's funny because you were the one that pointed out how snakes are everywhere in my life. And I've had a lot of really intense encounters with snakes that are very significant. I have this one snake skin that's been sitting on my altar since a very pivotal point in my life in 2017, which I actually found literally the day of the eclipse in 2017 while I was hiking by myself. You know, it's like you can't make this stuff up. Yeah. And now that I'm seeing all the branding together, I'm like, oh my God, this is so me. Mm-hmm. It's like the colors I love. It's the gold that I imagined, all the earth tones. You know, it's showing this newer part of myself, like in my power, but also being a little more in my feminine, like the subdued version, when before I had these like kind of darker colors that I didn't really vibe with. So I love that you take into account really all aspects of who someone is. Like, I've never thought about that. And I love that, because I actually always bring my clients into my space as well. It's like, I don't put pictures of them on my altar, but they are on my altar. Like every time I'm, you know, year round, if I'm working with clients, they're in what I imagine is this like imaginary ceremony. Hey everyone, just a quick break to remind you that the True Path Entrepreneur Group Mastermind Program is open for enrollment now. We start at the beginning of 2024 in January, but we are starting to take applications now. If you'd like to learn more, you can check out the Mastermind webpage on my site at bethaweinstein.com/mastermind. This is a 12-month group community-oriented mastermind program where you learn how to start, grow, and get clients in your business so that you can help more people, make a difference in the world, and do work that you absolutely love. This mastermind program is designed for new and early stage coaches, healers, psychedelic entrepreneurs, therapists, and anybody who wants to do transformational work in the world and wants to learn the exact steps you need to know to grow your business to the next level, to be able to share your unique medicine and make a difference in the world. So again, that's bethaweinstein.com/mastermind. The True Path Entrepreneur Group Business Coaching Mastermind Program is open now. So this has been a fascinating process to really witnessing what was coming through. And then here's my other question. So, and I will share this with everyone. So Bina was showing me these incredible graphics and images from day one, like the first pass. And I was like excited by everything. I mean, to be honest, I would put any one of those things on my website today. And, you know, there were like hawks and feathers and mountains and just different, you know, like imageries. And somehow it was this process of narrowing and narrowing and narrowing and narrowing. And now I feel like the shift that I could feel in my being was that now I actually embody like a whole brand. And I actually personally hate the word brand because I'm like, okay, I'm definitely more than a brand. But it's like standing for a movement. Mm-hmm. And I've always imagined standing for a movement, not just like being a coach and not just helping people, but like creating a bigger change on the planet. Like, you know, that's kind of what I'm all about. Money or not, I want to see people change. Like, I want to help people live the life of their dreams. Now, how did you get from some of these like beautiful hawk imagery to this like really perfect but like simple, I don't know what we call it, an icon or the logo? Like, what is that process? Because that was hard for me, where I was like, oh my God, I love it all.
Yeah. I mean, we started off with styles. Well, we started off with like me, like, Beth, can you send me pictures of your surroundings? Like, you know, I'm sure that was a little strange at first, but you graciously listened and provided all this great material. I mean, you had great material to work with, right? So you're sending me all these photos, and as you're sending me photos, I'm like doing my own research, what does the snake mean? What does Sekma mean? Like, reading about it. And, it's a very intuitive process. Like, it's just like, the snake was, it just kept coming back. And the logos, right? So we have two logos. We have one for Medicine for 80 Times and one for you. So, like, what symbols, we're distilling, everything down to these symbols, and they're so simple, and yet they mean so much, with the color that was chosen and the golds and the shapes and the lines and the thickness of the line. And, my God, it's just like, it's a process of like me working and like distilling it down to, it's like, I'm trying to like articulate this. It's like, it's an edit, it's like you edit and edit and edit and edit. And it's more like removing the things. And like, yeah, the hawk is beautiful. And there were so many beautiful elements that I'm just like, got it. Nope. It's just not it. It's just not it. And it's an intuitive process of like, creating a mood board, creating a stylescape, getting your input. I mean, there's a lot, like in the beginning, it was a lot of like really just listening to like how you're reacting to, reviewing the stylescapes and, just having this, like, I'm not a huge talker, but I observe very deeply, and I can tell like what lit you, like what inspired you, like how you reacted to it. God, what other process, like it does go into like choosing the font, also like choosing the font was a huge that took me, like, I was just like,
that's hard.
That was a hard one for sure, because we wanted to sans serif. We wanted it to be simple. We wanted it to be professional. And like, there are lots of fonts out there. Mm-hmm. And then, knowing that you wanted it to, you needed it for your website, for social media, like it had to be a font that was like, that was a large family, so you could pick from the different weights, and you can emphasize different things at different, in different areas, and some, like one of the logo types like was thin because and so it was like everything from like extra thin to bold, and we needed a robust family. I finally found one that I was so happy, and I'm just like, now I love that font. I'm like, I can't believe I didn't know that font before, and it's just amazing.
So crazy how like one word like written in 20 different fonts, they all have such, I mean, it probably also because we're both so empathetic, right? Like is that the right word?
Yeah.
We're both empaths. Like anybody who feels, like I can read something and feel like a weird feeling.
Right.
And I could feel so much like meaning behind every little like slant in a font.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing. It's like, oh my God, it's hard.
I was super like impressed. You definitely, I noticed you picked up, like when I went like literally one, weight thinner, and you're like, that's different. I'm like, how did you, I was like, wow, like.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it is different, and
I used to get paid in when I worked in the fashion industry, and actually, it's kind of like you said. It's like being an empath is great, and there's times where I'm like, oh my God, I wish I didn't notice and feel so much. But in my old fashion career, I worked for one designer that was so detailed. It was like insane. Like she would notice the most insane things that no normal human being would ever notice. So I, for years, was trained to notice every tiny little bits, like smallest, like, centimeter size details that no one, and then this is a clothing brand, like I'm like, no one would ever notice. But to her, it was always, everything was so important, which made someone like her was a very good designer, but it kind of made me crazy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that brings up like intention, like when I'm working, like everything is intentional. Every mark is intentional. Everything has meaning. And so it's important to speak, I think part of the brand style guide, like I wanted you to read and have this guide to go back to really get a sense and a feeling for like what this means, because the more you are connected to the meaning, the deeper the connection, and it's going to emulate, right? Like people will pick up on it, people will be magnetized by it. Like that's how, like, right? Like
hopefully.
Yeah. I mean, if you believe it, others will believe it, and I'm so thrilled that you had this experience yesterday, and because that's, to me, that's it. That's the gold right there.
Well, this is what I was going to ask you about, because it's interesting. So most of my clients are either newer entrepreneurs, like totally new, or in the first few years, and I always tell them, look, like, choose something that you can just do that's kind of low cost, but kind of like the scrappy way. To those of my clients that are maybe a little higher level or been in business a few years or could afford it, then I say like it's important to establish some kind of a branding. But now that I've just gone through this, I know what the difference is. It's that embodiment of really, like, one of the first things I say to my clients, like literally week number 1, is to just own who you are. Like, start the process of owning, like, okay, you're starting a new coaching business. Okay, call yourself a coach. It's, even if you've never had a client in your life, you have to at least start that process of owning it. Like, it's like be, do, have. You have to become it first. And I just realized, like, oh, maybe I should tell my clients to go get a logo or a brand, something, like, even if it's just like one little thing, to start that process of taking yourself seriously. Yeah. Like I did have someone do my branding before. It was just, it was like my web designer who's decent, but it was kind of like, did the job. We didn't overthink it. It looked good enough, but it never, I think back then it was like, oh, this is good enough to grow a business. And it was, because my business grew. But it never really got me into the, like, my depth of my power and my authenticity, which is when, 4 years ago, I knew I needed to rebrand. I mean, 4 years ago is when I was really like, I'm ready to rebrand. And it took me 4 years to find the right person to do it.
Yeah.
Which says a lot.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, ooh, but I'm curious, what are your views on, like, how does a newer entrepreneur who maybe doesn't have tons of money to invest, but like wants something, like, do you think it's important for them to have some kind of a branding? And if so, what do you recommend for a new person who's not ready to like maybe they don't even know what their business looks like yet?
Yeah.
You know, like, what would you say to them?
I would say that it is important to find something that you connect to, something that has meaning for you. And it doesn't have to be, you know, anything big, you know, like it doesn't have to, you can go to Canva, right? Like Canva, right? It's like you can pick out colors, say everything, you know, colors. You could go on Google and do a search for what the meaning of colors. You can go on Google, go on Pinterest and like look at, there's so many visual things that you can see. Like, what are you connected to? Like, you know, do you like nature? Like, do you like animals? Are you into archetypes? Like, what books do you read? Like, you can pull information from there. You know, I have a section of my discovery call, which I call it your essence. And, you know, what is your essence? Like, what makes you unique? Like, find that. I have a notebook. I'm getting I have notebooks everywhere. But like, I write lists of words. I actually start with words. That's where I start. Like, and then from there, you know, I distill it down to like, well, what are the 3 words? You know, like what are, you know, and how does that inform the imagery that I'm looking for?
Yeah. Actually, it's funny now that you mentioned the word thing. I did that when I was launching my old running clothing business. I remember it must have been intuitive because I was never taught that. But I was coming up with the name, and that was a whole animal in itself. And then it was kind of like, okay, I knew what this brand was about, but how am I supposed to convey that? You know? So I remember making this huge list of words and kind of like yanking out a few that stood that just kind of like were my guiding light for the brand. Mm-hmm. You know, like what I saw as the vision, and kind of just built the whole brand around that. The funny thing is I built it for a specific archetype of a person, like in a certain age group and a certain kind of lifestyle. And it ended up being, which I realized was maybe an aspirational thing. It ended up being someone who is, like 30 years older than that. Mm-hmm. In a slightly different lifestyle, they kept buying it. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I designed the brand for this one kind of person, and then it ended up being sold to this other kind of person, but somehow there was a connection there.
Yeah.
Which is like, that was a weird learning experience, but I do remember going through the words. So is that something you would suggest to maybe a newbies? Like, because I always tell people, like, one of the very first exercises I have people do is this kind of like big, I call it the brain dump. And again, I learned this intuitively, and then I found out later other business coaches do this. But one of the question is, write, I think it says like, what are 20 words to describe your brand, or like describe your business? And they might say, you know, like healing or integration or whatever it is. But, and then I've never done anything with it though, mm-hmm. like with them. Mm-hmm. So is that something you suggest? Is maybe like brainstorm words and... Yeah,
absolutely. Words, you know, feelings. You know, a feeling has a certain experience to it, right? Like your temperament, you know, a temperament, like how something feels. Like, how would your business feel? Like if you were able to touch it, you know, like, so I would, you know, I use all my senses, and the more that I use all my senses, the deeper that I can go. So if I'm like, what does it smell like? What does it taste like? What is it, like, what would it sound like? What would your business brand sound like?
Cool.
Like it can, and then, maybe like if you have the word bold, like, well, what color goes with bold? It could be, I mean, and it's different for everyone, right? Like bold could be red for someone, like bold could be, orange. It does, but it's specific to you, right? So, and, working with working with a designer, I think, if you find the right designer, they'll help you with this stuff. Yeah. They'll help you boil it down to like, what are the absolute necessary things that I want to convey. Like it's important.
So interesting. Now, one thing that was coming up is that, it's like if you want to do branding for a lot of coaches or healers or people in the psychedelic space, and I think this is one thing I said to you at the beginning, which I was like, well, so many of us think alike. Because we're on, all humans are archetypes. We're on a similar path. We're into the same things. We've been to the same places. And I think I said something about, well, I don't want the same sacred geometry that everybody else has, and especially in the coaching space, I mean, all of us have built sacred geometry into our logos because we all love it. We all vibe with it. It stands for something. It has meaning. It's, stands for the kind of world that we want to see. So there's, the sacred geometry, there's the animals, there's the earth, there's the moon, there's the stars, there's the sun. I mean, to me, there's only so much you can really do at some point. But I'm wondering, this was something I was always really concerned with, is like, oh, I look too much like so-and-so, or I don't want to be just like so-and-so. And of course, the more we were working on this, I came across like 4 or 5 other people that kind of looked similar, but they were in, and they were kind of in the same like coaching or psychedelic space. And I'm like, oh my God, what do I do? I want to be true to myself, but I want to stand out and be different. But then we are all kind of archetypes and working in kind of the similar, we're in somewhat similar realm. Like I look at my friend Daniel Shankin, TAM Integration, he has the Ouroboros, the snake as his logo. And I think it has like a little mountain. He chose a certain color, but like, how does like any coach or anyone in the psychedelic space stand out yet be true to themselves? Like, Is this even possible, or is this just the world we're in as kind of limited visually?
Yeah, I know, right? I think, and that's why it's so important to always go back to your like, what is your essence and your brand story. That's why, like, every single line is intentional. Every single color is intentional. Like I know, and you mentioned this like several times. And from my perspective, I was just like, don't worry. And of course, how would you not worry, right? But I was like, we're gonna get there. We're gonna keep doing the edits, keep deciding on the colors, keep looking at the weight. And if you hire someone to custom make a symbol for you, it's like, there is only that one. Like, yes, someone's using another snake, but their snake is like, has a different aesthetic to it, and that says something different, right? So I don't think it's infinite. It's like as infinite as like, like the infinite like black void. It's like where creation is, where there is source. I don't think there's a limit. I think like I can make 100 snakes and they can all be different. But because I'm like, this snake is for Beth, and this snake is for, that other person, it's always going to be different. I think, that's my perspective on it.
Bina knows I have this deep fear of either, first it was like, oh my God, like, so true story. And maybe I'll send this to her. We were already like 98% done. Like, I think you were just working on the final deliverables when I I had interviewed my friend Laura Dawn, was like, I hadn't looked at her website in freaking years. Like, I just don't, I honestly, even friends of mine, I like never look at social media. It's just, I'm busy, right? So I don't really pay attention to a lot of other people. And then I was like, oh my God, she has a snake. And I got like really upset. And then, you know, it's kind of that same thing. Like you said, it's like, well, what am I going to do? Change the entire thing now that we're 98% done? You know, it's one person. We're all different. And then I have this other fear of like, oh my God, now everybody's going to copy me. And then it's weird with this world that we're in of AI. This has come up so much because now I'm starting to notice more and more people using AI art in their whatever it is, their branding, their emails, their lead pages, it's not really my style. I still don't like most of the aesthetic. I've seen some, I guess, but you know, then there's AI. It's like, what kind of world are we going to get to? Is everybody going to look alike, or is it going to be this kind of like you said, do you believe that we're just going to all start looking alike because of AI, and then it's going to be like your AI versus my AI? Or have you ever gotten any like concerns or downloads about where this is all going?
You know, oddly, I am not concerned. I mean, it's like, it's inevitable. We can't stop it. Right. So I'd rather, you know, flow with it. And I just know I'm not really worried about the creative thing. Like, someone's gonna hire me for me. Yeah. And we're gonna create something, we're gonna collaborate, and there's only one me and there's only one you, and it just, the whole AI thing to me doesn't matter. I mean, I don't know, 5 years from now, I might be saying something different, but at this moment, I can't worry about it.
That makes me feel a little relieved. Yeah, and I'm not worried. It's just, it's so strange sometimes because even though it is limitless, like there's infinite designs, there's infinite possibilities. And this is actually what I keep talking about is that, yes, there's your branding, there's your writing, there's whatever you put out there. And in the end, it's going to be more important than ever to just be fully in your essence, to be your true self out there in the world, to be like fully you. And I do believe as more and more people wake up and as the energy on the planet shifts, there's more and more people that are going to be sensitive to your energy, whether it's like looking at your AI art or your new logo or what. It's like, well, what do you stand for? What are you putting out there? What are you actually doing in the world? Like, how is your heart and your energy? And that's where I keep saying is like, okay, because I bet, you know, I actually still haven't told Laura about my new artwork, but I'm like, I bet if I showed it to her, she could care less. You know, she'd be like, what? Because she's the same way I am. Like, I don't really pay attention. And when occasionally I'll see, I mean, I've seen people blatantly copy certain things I've done. And you know, it's kind of like it irks me for about 2 seconds. And I'm like, whatever. Yeah. You know, it's like, because that person's energy and essence will attract in the right people for them. And mine, and it really doesn't matter if we do the exact, like I literally had someone copy one of my workshops and the emails and like pretty much everything about it. And I was like, you know what? It's this world we live in, you know, it's like there's 1,000, I actually have used this example for years. There's bottled water companies. Yeah. There's water that, at least where I live, there's a spring where you can get unlimited water for free from the earth. And there is bottled water being sold for, I don't know what people sell it for these days, $7 a bottle. And somehow when you go, and the only time I buy a bottled water is at the airport, there's like, 7 or 8 different brands, and there's still only one that I choose, you know? And it's not the cheapest one. I choose the one that tastes the best. It's just funny because it's come up so much with people like really being afraid of being copied and then the future of AI. But, you know, I'm curious, like, what are your views on how energy plays a part in all this? Like, do you think about this a lot? And is this something you've seen with your clients in the past?
Oh, yeah. Energy says it all. And whether you realize it or not, and whether you're sensitive to it or not, you still are. It's just, you're going to see it. You're going to be magnetized. I mean, live, what we live in a holographic world, like we can only see what is part of us, right? So, that is, we create our own space, we create our own world. Yeah.
Yeah, this is going to be so important to remember as the who knows what's going to happen in the future. But speaking of the future, Bina, I want to hear, what is it that you are up to over the next 6 to 12 months? Like, what is it you want to manifest and bring to life? Like, do you have any plans in your business? I'm curious. Like, what is it you're putting out there?
Well, I just started working on another project for a cannabis company. They're creating a new brand, and that's really exciting. So that's work stuff. I am just really pretty obsessed with my business and creating processes this sounds really boring, but like creating processes that are really easy so I can get all of the work aside so I can be present with my clients and have fun doing, design projects and creating stories. So I'm going to be doing a lot of figuring out what those processes are. I've been doing this for full time for a year and a half. So it's time to it's a constant tweaking, right? So I'm next leveling everything. And definitely my work, my medicine work, the journeying is very important to me. Also, like breath work is a really big part of how I do like on the weekly. I go in there specifically with questions about my business, and I come out with this action steps, like constantly, and so it's developing, this new way of working where I'm creating the way I want to work. And that's what's really exciting me right now. And I don't, no one else I don't have to fit into someone's box. Like, I think I see things very differently. I feel, I don't always fit into the 9 to 5. I never fit into the 9 to 5 world. It was pretty painful. Yeah, so it's like, well, here I am, and I want to make life fun and joyful, and I want to connect, and so I'm really like developing, this life that being the architect of my own life. Like I'm just really working on that, and go on vacations.
That too.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. I know. I look back at the 9 to 5. I still occasionally have nightmares, and it's so funny because it's like, wait, who decided that this is how it had to be done?
Yeah.
Like even I have certain meetings that I have to show up to in my business because I have people that come to a Monday morning meeting. But besides that, it's like, well, I'll work when it feels good to me. I have client calls, but yeah, we get to create it, and who knows what can happen next. And I love that you're working for a cannabis company, and there will probably be more psychedelic and other plant medicines and legal plant medicines and breathwork facilitators and coaches and healers that all need your help. And I am so honored. I actually already am like, I have a list of things I want to rehire you for.
Awesome.
Like, I'm like, now that we have all this, I just need like this and this and this and this. But
yeah.
One thing at a time. I am really happy, and I'm so excited to unveil this to the world. I'm like, oh gosh, this is going to be so long to explain. Maybe I'll do a solo episode explaining all the visions that I had and how it came to this, almost 5 years later.
I would really love that, if very interested in hearing about it.
And it's crazy because I finally bought a whole book on Sekhmet, and I'm actually in this like Venus underworld journey with this astrologer I follow. That's like this whole, I don't know, I think it's like over a year because we follow Venus's journey into the underworld, and Sekhmet is a part of it. And I'm like, oh my God, that's exactly, it's just all the synchronicities that add up over time that
Yeah.
come to this one point. And where I am in my life today, after all these years of like major growth and transformation, it's like, oh, okay. Like I feel like I've completed, I've been saying to so many people, this year has been a very big year of like completing circles, like kind of hitting to that point where the snake is finally reaching its tail, and then it's going to go around again. And it feels like such a really ripe and potent time to release this new branding to the world, and also just kind of own who I truly am and not worry about algorithms or if this works or if it doesn't, because that's it. It's like the truest of our authenticity is all it's about.
Yeah.
And I think especially this crazy world we're entering into with, who knows what's coming next and platforms and technology, I don't think we can like run things based on algorithms anymore. We have to run it based on our energy and our essence, exactly like you say. So
Yeah.
I am so honored to have worked with you and to have
you.
had you here to bring on your beautiful story. And we'll share your website and your free gift and all your links in the show notes. And the only rule is you cannot copy my branding directly.
Right. Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Beth. This is fun. I thank you a lot. And I look forward to seeing it out in the world. I'm so excited.
I am too.
Yeah.
And yes, everybody, I highly recommend Bina. Check her out and just, tell her that you heard about her here on Medicine for These Times.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Bina. It was so good to have you here.
Thank you, Beth.
I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you're feeling inspired, I'd appreciate it if you showed your love with a review. And check out my YouTube channel where you can find the video version of this podcast. You can also head to bethaweinstein.com to learn more about me and grab my free business growth trainings. Remember, you carry your own unique medicine, and your medicine is what we need for these times.